This is my kale crop, and you can see how many times I've harvested off of this. It's almost being a kale tree. But when I harvest these pieces off, I can make a nice little bundle of kale and then keep harvesting as this thing continues to grow up. These plants are more than a year old. Here is my lettuce crop. This was an oak leaf lettuce that I hadn't harvested in a few weeks, and this is called going to bolt. So this plant has stretched up, sent all its energy and resources into bolting. Bolting results in flowers. Once it starts to do this and it commits all that energy, it's not very tasty anymore. Okay, one of the things I like to do is I like to plant carrots in September or October from seed, depending on where you are and how cold you are. The colder your location is, plant them earlier. The warmer your location is, you can delay that into October. But I have some carrots here. I had a nice 15-20 foot row of carrots that were seeded out in about the 1st of October. And so now it's way past January. It's the end of January, and we've been taking out the carrots we need. And then if it's going to get really cold, you can straw mulch over them and just leave them in the ground like an all-winter refrigerator. And so I have here some of the carrots. The foliage has kind of been frosted down, burned down, but you can see here nice beautiful carrots insulated in the ground. Get a little dirt off, and nothing better than a fresh carrot right from the garden. Pull a few out and see how they look. Okay, that's a nice orange carrot. Let's see what else we got here. Oh yeah, this is my multicolored carrot. So here's a purple carrot to go with the orange carrot, and if I remember these correctly, there was some white carrots in here too as well. Okay, yeah, here's one of the white carrots. So not a bright white, but kind of a off-white. So you got a white carrot, purple carrot, orange carrot. Makes a nice little decorative look here. Arugula. I like to grow arugula, but I like to do it as almost like a microgreen. And so I seed it out, and really dense. I pull them up. You can still see some roots growing on the bottom. I shaved the bottom off a little bit, bundled them, dunked them in a bucket of water, shake them off, make sure I'm not sending any organic insects along with my harvest. But that's a nice bundle of arugula. Some people like it, some people don't. This area really got overrun with weeds because it's been here for so long, but this is my beet crop. And so you have these beets, and the beet greens are also edible. So these beets have been in the ground since early spring. They're ready to get out of here. So I'm gonna harvest all I can out of here and then till this area up, prepare for fall plantings. Chard, Swiss chard, now comes in varieties like a rainbow of colors. So here's some red stems, here's some yellow stems, I have some pinkish stems here. Here's some really dark red stems. And you can see I've harvested these multiple times. So if you take individual leaves out and harvest those, you can make a bundle of multicolored chard stems. People use the greens when they're young. They also use these stalks, almost like a celery, and I think it's cooked in stir fries. They make a really attractive bundle. And the neat thing is the plants last a very long time and are very productive, and they can do in the cool season, and they can also do in the warm season, and it's just a pretty good plant. I recommend it for novice people starting organic gardening. Here's my sweet basil, easy to grow in the warm season. Most insects stay away from it. I can take multiple cuttings off of this, so I could come in, cut this whole thing from the branch spots everywhere where there was a leaf. That's called a node, and a new branch will come back out. I've harvested these a couple of times. Here's one I harvested just recently. These are all sweet basil. Now you want to get them harvested before they go to flower. Once they go to flower, they kind of lose the tastiness, and it kind of ends. This plant thinks it's done its job because it's an annual, and so you want to, I'd have my pruners, but you'd want to cut that out, and that encourages the branches below to come out. Now that branch below that's coming out is flowering, so when I harvest, I'd pinch that out as well. So new branches are going to come out, and you can have a nice huge basil plant with multiple cuttings per growing season. Again, this is warm season. When it gets to the end of this season, I'm going to take some cuttings off of these, stick those, get roots on them, and then I'll plant them in the greenhouse so we can have basil all winter long as well. Okay, here's my row of peppers. I have about 8 to 10 different varieties of peppers here. You notice the cucumbers are really encroaching in on them, so I'm going to pull those vines back to expose them a little bit. But here you can see the flowers coming out, and again, this is a warm season crop, so they'll be good here for many weeks. But here I noticed some nice big huge green bell peppers, but they pulled the stem down and broke it here, so I'm gonna have to harvest those and decide whether to cut that off or not. Here's some young peppers. So these ones that form really big bells, you have to watch out for those. And take them off before they get too big or pull the plant down. Here's some more starting to do that same thing. Nice big green bell peppers. Here's a different little chili variety. Okay, this area has my cantaloupe, watermelons, cucumbers, different variety of cucumbers, and it's just kind of become a huge spreading mess. So you need to keep in mind, I'm going to get lots of fruit out of here this year, but I really can't even walk in there. So it's going to be hard to get in to find those melons when they're ready. But if I come in here, I can see some cantaloupe there, and I'll just be watching those to see when they get close to being ready. And then if I sneak over this way, I can find a few of these sugar baby watermelons. And so what I'll be looking for is the tendril drying up just next to the plant stem, and then I'll know I might be able to have a watermelon that's ready. Cucumbers, I think I already showed you. These are just getting out of control because it's getting hard to get in here to harvest, but this is not what you want in a cucumber. That's a nice big healthy cucumber. It tells me I've done a lot with these vines to get them the right nutrition and cultivation to protect them, but this is pretty much chicken food. This crop, this very definitive leaf, is representative of okra. And so what happens with okra is you have these flower buds that open. This is a warm season crop. Flower buds open. It's followed by a small pollinated fruit, just barely pollinated. This is after the flower has fallen off. And then you get an actual okra, which you don't want your okra to get much bigger than this. And so harvesting frequently, these plants can get 5-6 feet tall in a long warm growing season area and be very productive. You can get hundreds of these off of just one plant. Okay, there's a difference between summer squashes and winter squashes. The difference being, in my mind, summer squashes are harvested when they're very young and tender. Some of these are zucchinis, crookneck squash, patty pan squash. You want them harvested quick, keep the production going, tender young squash. The other is winter squash. These are things like pumpkins, spaghetti squash, acorn squash. Squashes that are going to stay on the vine, almost harden up in a way and become storable. They call them winter squashes because a lot of times they used to take these squashes, put them in root cellars or something like that, and you could keep these squashes all winter long. So I'm going to show you a few of the ones I'm growing. Here's a classic green zucchini. I see some, here's one that's opening today. It's on a female flower. Here's some fruit from the last couple days. That's the size you want for a green zucchini. That looks nice. Here's another one here. So these will be harvested today. Here's some nice young yellow squash. This is a summer squash variety. These should be picked about here. This bloom was open this morning, and so this one's ready for harvest. Here's some more. These ones can get quite big pretty fast, and so you can see one there that's just too big for these, and so those will become chicken food or other kind of animal feed. gigantic pumpkins. First thing you want to do is start with really rich, healthy soil. Amend that soil, make sure that soil is weed free. Then you have to have seed that has genetic potential of getting that big. So the best place to start would be also from other large pumpkin seed if you're doing seed saving. The other thing is a pumpkin will tendril out, vine out in all different directions and cover a huge square footage area. You want to give it plenty of room to grow, but when you follow those vines, like in this case, this vine has a pumpkin forming. I can keep following this vine and there's another pumpkin forming. If I follow out every other vine it's sending out, it probably has 5 to 10 pumpkins forming. The way you get a giant pumpkin is you choose one in a good placement. It's sitting in a nice spot, protected, and you say, this is going to be my giant pumpkin. So you let this one grow and you take the other ones off. So you want one vine with just one pumpkin forming on it. But you still want all of this foliage that's going to photosynthesize and send nutrients back to that pumpkin. And in this case, here is a female flower with a pumpkin forming on it. Oops, I just did that in because I took its flower off. But I would take that off and keep all the energy flowing to that pumpkin. Okay? Good luck. Happy giant pumpkining. Okay, if this spot looks familiar, this is where I planted potatoes in the early spring. We've got some grasses that have set down and such, but it's not been an issue. The tops of the potatoes now are dried up and gone. So we can go down here and look. I can start to see the old potato plant, and then if I dig around here at the base, I'm finding lots of nice big potatoes. Now these should be buried. I should have mounded these up a little bit more so they weren't so close to the surface, but obviously we're getting good potatoes here. Now this ground is real soft and productive. This is actually a red potato, and so there's an amount of there is a poundage that you should get for every pound of potato you plant. Some of these I'll save and plant again, like this one's even sprouting. I could save some of these, plant them again. I could have dug up new potatoes throughout the season, but I've just chosen to let these grow and then dig them up. Actually, here's a nice, that's a nice big potato. So this one plant set all these nice potatoes. I have a digging spade. You're wondering why I'm doing this with my hand. It's pretty soft soil here, getting lots of small potatoes. And a lot of these I might not even recover, and they may come up again later anyways. Here's the stalk of another plant with potatoes around here. That's a nice big one. I'm being careful because I have drip tape, and this drip tape, I don't want to poke it and jam into it. Yeah, this area did really good. So lots of red potatoes. I did red potatoes on this side, and then like a Yukon Gold on this side. I started digging some here. These are the bush beans that I planted in early, it was like early March. It was too cold outside to plant beans outside. It was still freezing. So I planted these inside in these raised beds in the small greenhouse. And this little strip of green beans has gotten me a half bucket of green beans every week. I've been collecting them off of here for at least 8 weeks now, and these are kind of reaching the point where the blooming is still happening. They're still getting beans, but they're getting a little leggy, starting to fall over. Oops, here's one I forgot. But now I've planted, now that it's warm outside, I've planted green beans outside, and I can start harvesting off of those, and I can transition these beans out. So the end of the season, all the tomato plants are down and dead. Brown material. These are just the ones that didn't make it. They're soft, but if I dig down underneath, I might find some ripe tomatoes, and then I can decide if they're good or not. There's some that aren't, but here's, for instance, that's a nice tomato that's still firm and ripe. It was down underneath all this heavy material, so maybe we'll find some more in here. Good place to look for some tomatoes. Alright. One of the enjoyable things about gardening is as I was digging, I came across a whole bunch of radishes. And obviously these have been a little bit pithy. They've been out here for a long time. But they're not wasted because obviously they could go into the compost. Or I found some girls here that might be interested in my old radishes. So let's see. Yes, there they go.